2, 1.
Hello, everybody. It's either good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Bolin Audinate live stream, where today we are joined by Kat Taub, one of my favorite Audinate people on the planet. That is not just me saying that for the benefit of the stream. Kat knows I actually mean that. Welcome, Kat. We're glad you're here.
Hey Tim, I'm super glad to be here.
Thank you for giving up so much of your time in the middle of a busy day. This is going to be fun. So as the plan is for us to be able to talk about Dante AV, what it is, what it does, AV Ultra, AVH. We're going to get to show you the products that Bolin has. We won't do a full demo of all of that, but you'll at least get to see Ultra, you'll get to see an H feed, and we're going to focus on Audinate's software tools, specifically Dante Studio, which has a brand new version I'm going to ask Kat to talk about here in a few minutes, and Dante Video Viewer. So we also intended for this to be interactive. That means you get to ask questions. We will answer them if we can. I think between the two of us, we should be able to cover most things, as long as it's about Dante AV. If you're going to ask for life advice or the best island in the Bahamas for vacations, I don't know. We may not be there for you, but we will.
Tim might be able to answer
well,
that.
I actually could. In some senses, I lived in the Bahamas for a while. But anyway, we will try to remember to pause between sections to catch any questions that seem really relevant to what we've talked about. So let's get right into it. I've introduced Kat, but Kat, first I want to say, for the benefit of our audience, I love your role at Audinate, because as product marketing managers, we get to interact a lot, but I'm not going to assume everybody in the live stream today knows who you are and what you do at Audinate. So let's just take a few minutes and let them know.
Sure. Hi, I'm Kat. I am product marketing manager for the networked video line of products. So that includes all sort of flavors of Dante AV as well as the Dante Studio software. I joined Audinate about 5.5 years ago. I started as a technical sales engineer on the solutions team, who work with end users and integrators about speccing Dante solutions, including Dante Domain Manager. And prior to that, I worked as a sort of like AV manager at a college, Berklee College of Music in Boston, where I live.
Thank you, Kat. I love that you called the Berklee College of Music a college. It's pretty prestigious.
Just a college.
Yes.
I just had to run like Atmos Studios. And,
oh my gosh, yeah, just those little insignificant things from Dolby. You are so professional. It's amazing. One of the things I was going to drop in there, because I don't know that a lot of the audience knows this. In fact, most of our peers in Pro AV don't. That I spent 40 years in as a worship leader, minister of music. There's lots of titles for this, but for Pro AV purposes, it meant I went from just a piano or an organ to full-on digital audio with house mix, broadcast mix, multiple cameras, LED lighting consoles, all that kind of thing, which meant that I'd used Dante in the audio space for a long time, and was happily prepared to know what Dante AV potential was, and then to be in a position now where I get to put it into practice and use it. So I thought I'd just add that. All right. Kat, let's look at what we always do in a stream or in a video that I make. We show everybody the signal flow. So we're gonna do that. Let's go over to what is on the table today, and I'll walk you quickly through everything that's here and then what it's doing. So we are using, by the way, and I know Kat is, everybody's using Dante Audio, and you may assume that that's true, but I just wanted you to know it is. Kat is where she is, and we're using Dante for our audio. We have a D412 Dante AV Ultra native camera. We've got a D2-210H, a Dante AVH camera. We've got Dante AV Ultra encoders and decoders. We have a Blu-ray player that's doing 4K 60, which I'll point out here in a second. We have a switch. In our case, it's the Netgear M4250, and we have every single port full of that switch, which is kind of common for us. And we're using software today. So on this one PC laptop, I have Dante Controller, Dante Virtual Sound Card, Dante Studio, Dante Video Viewer, and whatever else is running today, but the machine is handling. And then we've got a PTZ controller. So that's the bulk of the equipment. Let me point out before I forget, Dante AV Ultra is capable of 4K P60 444 space, and so I just wanted to point that out. And then I'm going to go through a little bit more of the hardware, but before I do that, Kat, you are truly the expert here. I'd love for you to talk to our audience about Dante AV, just in general, and then in specific, you know, between Ultra and H. So let's do an overview of that. Yeah.
Great. So basically the idea for us was to get a video product that worked just like Dante Audio. So being able to configure your video and audio in one place in Dante Controller, as well as send those routes from one place. Just make it really simple to do video and not have to open up a bunch of different applications when you want to run an event or a meeting or whatever you're doing with AV. So that's kind of the idea behind Dante AV. And then we originally built out Dante AV Ultra, which I kind of like to compare it as like the supercar of Dante, of like AV, and especially of Dante AV flavors. It kind of does that ultra high quality that Tim was just talking about. It also does subframe latency, so it's sort of visually imperceptible latency. So great for live events when you have someone on stage and you need to see the image behind them. You're going to be able to see that really clearly and without it causing any sort of like jarring effects. And then also it also stays in sync with the audio, so you get AV sync with AV Ultra as well. So that's all good and great, but sometimes, you know, you just need to like go to the grocery store and you don't need your like supercar to do that. You just want to have a Zoom call. You know, you want to set up to record your classroom for remote capture, lecture capture, or for your hybrid students. And for that, we introduced Dante AVH. So that's a really cool solution because manufacturers can build it into existing networked AV cameras. And it just uses really popular H.264 encoding that's ultra light bandwidth. That's kind of the compromise you end up getting, where AV Ultra, super high bandwidth, but you get all that great features, where AVH, you get low bandwidth, but not quite as high quality, and a bit longer latency. So you have a couple frames of latency. So good for streaming,
yes.
good for conferencing.
Say, I'm not surprised at how well you do that, but it's just really fun to hear all in one place. When you and I are talking, it's usually about something really nuts and bolts specific, either in the hardware or the software. What a great overview. I love the part about the supercar versus the vehicle you may take to go to the grocery store or just, you know, around the block or something. And of course, everything you said is correct. Our role, Bolin's role as a manufacturer, was to be able to take all of this amazing software and hardware. And I also love the part when you mentioned that the goal of Dante AV, the V part, was to make the video as good as Dante Audio was. And I think all of us know what an incredibly powerful solution Dante has been and has proven to be. In fact, my experience, Kat, and I don't get paid anything for saying this, but my experience is when we walk into a situation where they're interested in Dante AV, one of the main reasons, in fact, the most popular reason, is because Dante is so reliable and so good that they're sure video is going to match it. And part of our goal today is to let customers and potential buyers, systems integrators, just general audience members know that's true. It really is, from a software standpoint and a hardware standpoint. Kat mentioned Dante AV Ultra. She mentioned much more bandwidth, and it is, of course it is. It's a lot more than audio for sure. One of the things that Kat and I were talking about in the pre-show was a thing called bandwidth limiting. And in case I forget to mention it, one of the options within Dante Controller, in fact, I should just show it. Let me go to the device view of the sending product that's sending out this Blu-ray signal, right? Transmit.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
and then you want to go to
one. Yeah. Nope, I was in the right place to start with. I just didn't go to the video tab.
Yeah.
You should know this.
It's just there in the video tab.
You should know this. So this is live, people. Yeah. So and in fact, for those in the audience who have worked with Dante for years, you wouldn't know this either necessarily because the video tab is new. That is a part of Dante AV. And so that video config is exactly where the bandwidth limiting occurs. And so you can see that we have enabled it, and where that signal should be 700 megabits, I've got it limited to 4. And if you were looking right up on top of this monitor like we do with live shows, you would not have any clue that we had done that kind of limiting. JPEG 2000 and Dante AV Ultra do an amazing job with that particular thing. So since we're here at Ultra, I'm just going to turn the audio up a bit. So as you can hear, it's actually working. I'm laughing. Maybe Kat is too. I don't know. We've done a lot of shows together where we're at the same place, and for Dante Connect, we used this movie for every single one, and we played it for, I don't know, 6-8 hours a day. But just to illustrate the stability, and that's why I'm bringing it up, the stability of Dante AV Ultra, even when you're sending a 4K 6444 signal like we are, it stayed up all day and worked just great. Yep. So that's...
And Bolin did some like magic with the fans to make it not like overheat.
Thank you for mentioning that, Kat, because we did. Now, the audience can't do this, but this machine is, this encoder has been up for hours. I mean, hours. And it's warm because it's doing a whole lot, but we did some very, very special engineering magic on the inside to really handle heat dissipation and make sure that that the customer would have a really, really great response. So from a workflow standpoint, I'll just quickly mention, we've got the Blu-ray player here. It's being encoded and then put onto the Dante AV network with this cable. It's coming through the switch out to this is the D20S, it's got the SDI out. This is the decoder, and then this HDMI cable, that one, is running to this monitor, and that's how the video is being displayed. So encoded onto Dante AV, routed through Dante controller. It's just a simple subscription. That's all you do. Then being decoded here and sent out to the monitor. And then obviously we ran the audio. We subscribed it to the speaker, right? So that's one of the other great things about Dante AV is that it works just like the audio does. You can have subscriptions. You can pair with audio coming from any Dante source on your network. And in fact, our mixer is also sending a feed out, which we've subscribed in multiple ways. So that's Dante AV Ultra, not a full overview, but just so that you can see it and you can know the products that Bolin has. Then there's one more, and that's this guy right here. That is the D412. Let me bring it up, which is the Dante AV Ultra native camera. Now what I'm going to do, let's switch to the computer view a second so I can show people what's going to happen. Right now, this is Dante Video Viewer, which in conjunction with Dante Studio, which we're going to go over in more detail, is how you can take a Dante AV Ultra flow or a Dante AVH flow and send it to a computer. That's all that's happening here. This is software that's decoding this signal flow. Right now, it is subscribed to the H camera, and I'll show you that as soon as I can find, there it is. It's subscribed to the H camera. So if I move the H camera around, I don't want to move it too far because you'll see too much behind the curtain, Kat. You know, the wizard.
I mean, we're already seeing our confidence monitors.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So what I'm going to do now is come back to Dante controller. I'll go to full screen, and I'm going to, here is the Dante AVH camera. I'm just going to move across and swap this over. Now, Kat, I so much want to talk about what's going to happen in the background, but just remind me not to forget when we get to Dante Studio, because this is a significant difference in the latest release, and let's not forget that. Audinate just announced a new version of Dante Studio, and so I'm going to ask Kat to talk about that. But I'm just going to change the subscription from the Dante AVH to the Dante AV Ultra camera. Then I'm going to go back now, and I'm going to move the Dante AV Ultra camera around. Now that's a 4K camera coming through Dante through the network being interpreted, Kat, by software. I want to make sure folks know that's what's happening here. Dante Studio is taking this JPEG 2000 Ultra feed and sending it to Dante Video Viewer. So we're going to talk about that. Let me go back to H because that's what we'll come back to. And you'll see all I had to do to make that change is just change the subscription in Dante Controller. It's that easy. Kat, in just a second, I'm going to ask you to talk to us about Dante Studio, but before I do that, I also want to mention another behind-the-scenes piece that you and I talked about, but I want to be sure that our audience knows. We are also using BitFocus Companion and a Stream Deck, and those little guys are changing every single thing that you see. Now, I'm doing Dante Controller by hand. Kat's going to talk about how that works and how you can also do that using a Stream Deck, and but I'll let her do that. Yeah. But for us, the BitFocus Companion Stream Deck workflow is also how we're switching pretty much everything we're doing today. So I just wanted to mention that, which will cue up, Kat. Let's talk about Audinate's new release.
Let's talk about it.
Yes, let's do it.
Are we talking about Studio or are we talking about the BitFocus?
Well, since we're on the Stream Deck BitFocus,
since we're on the subject, let's do that.
Let's stay on that.
So earlier this year, we released GraphQL, so for Dante, which allows you, if you have Dante Domain Manager, basically what it allows you to do is make API calls to the Dante Domain Manager server, and then that can reach out to your devices and it can change their subscriptions. So BitFocus Companion actually allows you to change Dante subscriptions. So instead of having to use Dante Controller, you could set up a Stream Deck to change Dante subscriptions, which is pretty cool. Great if you want to set up really simple studios to use for like classrooms and, other sorts of places where you don't want people having to go into Dante Controller. Mm-hmm. The other great part about that managed API is if you're doing things like setting up conferencing spaces and that sort of thing, you can also select between different Dante sources, audio and video, using things like a Crestron control panel or an AMX control panel. Those are the two we have right now, but you could even write your own like web page version that you just kind of use with a tablet or something like that if you're a talented developer.
Well, okay, so let's be sure that people didn't miss that. What I was doing by hand in Dante Controller, that's not hard, right? Mm-hmm. But what I just did can be, in a sense, automated through something like a Stream Deck and BitFocus Companion because of the new public API, which is built into Dante Domain Manager, and that's version 1.5, right? Going from there forward, why that's important too is because that new version of Dante Domain Manager also now is fully qualified with Dante AV Ultra across multiple subnets, which I'm sure Kat would have gotten to. But boy, this is something we have been up against for a bit. And for our education customers especially, but not just them, any organization that has multiple subnets, houses of worship do, lots of them. Dante AV Ultra now with Dante Domain Manager fully qualified across multiple subnets. So we were all celebrating and popping the confetti cannons when that was worked out. So I wanted to mention that. So, and you mentioned Crestron and AMX, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we also have modules available on the website for both of those, so easy to build into your... the AMX one might not be done yet, but the Crestron one is definitely on there.
Fantastic.
The other thing I wanted to say was, in regards to multiple subnets, Dante AVH also supported, but it is just unicast flows, so...
Yeah, since I wasn't, as we say in the South, double dog sure that one, I just didn't mention it, so good job.
No, it is. It's all good.
Good job, because I know multicast with Dante AV Ultra works right through DDM across subnets.
Well, it doesn't work. Multicast doesn't work across subnets.
Got it. Okay, so it's unicast with both Ultra and H.
Yep. That's
important. But we're all excited about that. The option to now have third-party control and through DDM, which is a masterful piece of software anyway. I consider that kind of a keystone piece in the Audinate arsenal of software. DDM is just amazing. You spend a lot of time with it.
Yes, that was my first job, was supporting that. Yeah, I'd say, it's definitely really cool, and I think like stay tuned over the next like 6 months or so for some announcements about other ways you could manage and control Dante too. So
Hey,
so if DDM isn't what you need, we might have something else for you that does what we need. So
you heard it
yeah,
here first, folks. I think anyway. And
yeah,
I know. There might be some skeptical people in our audience, Kat, but what I can say, professional to professional, is that Audinate and you in particular, but Audinate as a team have never told us something just so that we could hear something maybe we would want to hear. There is always something behind a statement like that. And it gives me confidence to know I'll see it. It may be a bit, but it's coming. You guys are really, really busy as software development teams and all the moving pieces in Audinate. There's a lot going on.
yeah. I think we launched like 17 different things like last year. It's
kind of
crazy.
crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's hop to Dante Studio, because I want to be sure people get a chance to know about it. Now, Dante Studio is not brand new, right? It's been out in some version or another for what, more than a year.
Yes.
But there's been some significant changes in Dante Studio. Please tell us what those are.
Yeah, so we consider basically Dante Studio 1.0 that was out prior to this year. The beginning of this year was kind of a beta release of Dante Studio, I would say. Launching this year, we launched Dante Studio 2.0, which introduced a subscription pricing model, new UI, support for Dante AVH. So that was really great to get out there. And then this latest version of Dante Studio now supports all of that still. But some cool things are, as Tim showed you in Dante Controller, it actually recognizes whether the camera is a Dante AV Ultra or Dante AVH camera, and you can like seamlessly switch between them now. So if you're trying to view multiple cameras on your network and you do have Dante AV Ultra and Dante AVH cameras, you can just really easily go in and view them, which is kind of nice. No more drop-down menu and having to like stop the subscription and start it again.
Right.
So that's pretty cool. The other thing we introduced is lower pricing, which everyone loves. Now it's $25 for the whole year, so about $2 a month, which is pretty reasonable. I feel like I pay a lot more for other apps that are less useful. And and the other thing is just some improvements to Dante AVH. So latency, much lower. I think we went from like over 100 milliseconds to under if it's a 1080p camera, which is really good. So you're only getting a couple frames of latency. That's kind of where we're at. We're still iterating and developing on it. So definitely stay tuned. What is Dante Studio? I feel like we should maybe talk about that.
Yes.
So it allows you to bring your Dante AV Ultra or H video streams into your computer. Tim showed Dante Video Viewer, which is a standalone app, but you actually can do some other stuff with it as well. Dante Video TX, which is on the screen right now, allows you to share your screen out to the network. So if Tim wanted to share his screen, I'm not going to make him do it right now because he haven't tested it. If Tim wanted to, he could share his computer screen to that monitor behind them. So if you had this in a podium in a classroom or at an event, you could then share a decoder attached to a display or to a projector. You could share your screen, and it's super high quality with the JPEG 2000 codec. So it looks great. Out, and it also is pretty low latency as well. Obviously the computer adds a little bit more than the hardware itself, but it's still super low. You wouldn't feel it. It wouldn't feel unnatural to you. And then so that works with Dante AV Ultra, and then the other side of that is Dante Video RX, which allows you to receive video directly into applications. So it shows up as like a camera source or a video device in things like if you're doing streaming or recording, OBS, vMix. If you're in Zoom, it shows up as a video source in Zoom or Microsoft Teams or in whatever sort of application you're using. It basically just requires a direct show interface that the application recognizes that.
We have a question. Are the feeds
so pretty useful to bring in that video without needing an extra like encoder or decoder.
Okay. Kat, we did get a question. Read that to me again, Sapan.
Are the feeds to Dante Studio using a decoder?
Oh, so The question is, are the feeds to Dante Studio using a decoder? And the answer is, well, yes, as long as you know the decoder is Dante Studio, right?
Yeah, the decoder is Dante Studio.
That's a great question, though, because it's easy to miss that fact. The answer, hardware decoder, no, which is it's a great question. No, it's not using a hardware decoder, and that's kind of the point, is that Dante Studio now becomes your decoder. Let's go back to transmitter a minute, because Kat mentioned this. I'm not sure people would have caught it. If you want to change to a different codec for the transmit right now, you can't. It's just JPEG 2000 for the screen share. So when you're sharing your computer's display, that's only going to be Dante AV Ultra, right? And then on the receiver side, Kat went over this, but I don't know that they can appreciate
that you don't have to select.
Yes. Over on the right-hand side where it just reads Video RX settings, there used to be settings there. And you would have to change Dante Studio to the flow you wanted, whether that was, JPEG Ultra or H. You would choose it here and then go back. And Kat mentioned this, unsubscribe and then resubscribe. And we all got used to it. It worked fine. It was early software. We all understood what was going on. But now, I'm just going to do it again. Right now, in Dante Controller, we have our D2210H. That was the little guy, the Dante AVH camera. And it is subscribed right here. Now, I just was too lazy to rename this. And I guess we should mention, in case people are new to Dante and Dante AV, you can name your device anything you want to. I just haven't changed this. We've got a couple of licenses.
I think mine says like Kat's mic and Kat's headphone amp on my network.
Very good. But right here, we have the Dante AVH flow. Now, before version 2, I would have had to come back here. I probably would have unsubscribed. Then I would have come to Dante Studio. Over in this section, I would have chosen Ultra, right? And then gone back to Dante Controller and come over here to where my D412, my Ultra camera is. And just, let's see. I'm going to change where the camera's pointed so Kat, the people in our audience can actually tell that the camera they're going to see in a minute is not this one, right?
It's not that one.
Hey, we're always telling the truth, but it doesn't hurt to show it, right? Okay, I'm going to come over to here, and all I have to do now is click in the intersection of the HDMI output, the flow of the 412 right into Dante Studio. Dante Studio in the background will realize, oh, I got to change what I'm looking at, and here we are. There's the 412 now, which I will move around a bit. But it's as simple as that. This is a much, much bigger signal. Kat mentioned earlier, Dante AV Ultra is more bandwidth. But, and now the audience gets to see what I see. Anyway, this is Dante Studio being the decoder for us. And then all I have to do is just say, I want this flow instead of that flow. It is, Kat, this is just so much of an improvement. It's hard to overstate. I think we lost the video feed. That's
not the Dante one.
No. Oh, good point.
Let's just make that clear.
That might hurt a little bit, and it's true. We did not lose the Dante video flow. We lost the Sony. I think even though it's plugged into power, there's some kind of conjunction with the battery, which fortunately we have multiple ones of them, and they're all charged, so it'll just be a few seconds. But they can see you, which is great.
Yeah,
but really,
I can talk more.
from both a customer standpoint and speaking from a manufacturer standpoint, the improvements to Dante Studio are so significant that it is becoming something I really want to talk to customers about. And then finally, I do not want to forget my videos back for the benefit of the audience. I don't want to forget, because you mentioned this, but the improvements for Dante AVH were also significant. Just the flow itself is much lower in latency. Not that it was horrible before, but you mentioned it's correct. It was above 100 milliseconds. It's like, I think we measured, 108 maybe or something. Anyway, with the latest update, that was reduced significantly. Yep. And to my eyes, Kat, it got a quality bump as well. and that was good
Yeah,
news for every manufacturer, right? Would you agree?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I'd say what people are seeing is around
You have
about
a
a
question
20
asking to
millisecond
compare
bump
Dante AV
down,
to
so 80
NDI.
milliseconds for H streams now, which is
Okay.
pretty good.
All right.
About five frames. And that may remind like that's running into software as well.
Correct.
So
That's exactly right.
it's lower if you're doing like decoder, encoder to decoder.
Oh, certainly. Yeah. And you mentioned, so let's bring it up again. In Dante AV Ultra, that is subframe latency. It is you can measure it, but it's not much at all. Let me square this camera up. It's just bothering me a little bit.
We typically say, the software might make it about a frame, but
well, sure. And then you've got the
certainly
network, and you have glass to glass.
well, the network's not.
Yeah.
But yeah, the encode's a decode.
We have a question. How to compare Dante AV to NDI? I think that's a fair and great question. You're going to have a slightly different answer than me, so I'll start with you, and then I'll go to me.
Yeah. So I think that, you'd want to make the comparison like Ultra to full bandwidth and H to HX. H to HX is going to be extremely similar. It's quite similar. It's using the same codec, which is the H.264/265. We're using H.264 right now. But basically, that's going to be extremely similar. What you're really getting there is the ability to manage it with the rest of your Dante ecosystem. So if you already have a Dante audio setup, now it's really easy for people to make changes to subscriptions, or if you have a really large system, to enroll it into Domain Manager and kind of utilize all of the tools that brings to your system. I think Ultra is not really comparable with NDI full bandwidth. It's kind of a different animal. It's certainly lower latency and a little bit better quality. They kind of came at it from the place, NDI came at it from the place as sort of like the TriCaster is the main thing, or you're doing like software to software, where we kind of started with the hardware with Dante AV Ultra. So it's a little bit more of like a hardware focused solution.
I love that answer, Kat.
I say it a lot.
I figured maybe you heard it once or twice. So from my standpoint, full disclosure, I am a big NDI fan. I used Bird Dog P200s. We had 5-6 of them. But as Kat mentioned, I also owned 2 TriCasters, and we had what turned out to be a first-class network. Now, we did it on purpose, but we didn't build it with NDI in mind. Yeah, that's why I wanted to mention it. We didn't build it with NDI in mind because it didn't exist then. And I need to quickly say, neither did Dante AV, right? So we had Dante, but not Dante AV. So NDI was a great choice, but we are sort of a best case scenario. Now, that's not that NDI can't be great. I think it can. There are areas where it's been around a lot longer, a whole lot longer. It's been developed for a very, very long time. And yes, there are some conveniences, there are software tools, there are pieces of hardware just everywhere, Kat. You can get an NDI feed anywhere you want it to go.
Yeah.
However, full NDI, and I'm saying this from a customer standpoint, but also as a manufacturer, because of course we compare these things. I agree with you that the quality of full NDI is good until you're A/Bing it right next to Dante AV. And if you're doing that, then JPEG 2000, I think to my eyes, looks better. It comes at a bandwidth cost, yes. But I think
it's a little bit more bandwidth.
It certainly is. But I think the quality you're getting is great. And you mentioned 2 other things I want to also talk about. If Dante is the foundation for your audio, then working with Dante AV is a thing of beauty. For one, you're going to get the same PTP timing. And so lip sync is achievable. And once you've achieved it, it's rock solid to the subframe over multiple endpoints. That is just something NDI wasn't built to do, not to that degree. Now, we had a fairly good success with NDI and iMag and that sort of thing. However, we would have to tweak it quite often. Rarely mid experience, but once, yeah. Unfortunately, the TriCaster has some awesome tools for that, and you can adjust the latency on the fly.
They definitely have that in mind.
Yeah, and I had to teach volunteers to do it. Now, this is not a slam against NDI ever. I don't think you'll hear either one.
I think it's yeah. Also, it's similar to mention this is specifically for Dante AV Ultra right now, as far as the lip sync stuff goes.
Right, exactly. Thank you. Because the other thing you mentioned was the Dante AVH and NDI HX are nearly the same thing, just not, it's a different ecosystem, right? So, but it's the same codec. Yeah, it's exactly a different package. And yes, you can flip Dante audio channels in and out of NDI. You can do that. And, but working natively in Dante and Dante AV, I think is just a smoother experience. Now, the caveat I would add is that NDI, because of all that long development time, NDI tools, Kat, you're familiar with these. They are astonishing. They are so
yes,
good.
I have a whole lovely comparison of my own that I'm not sharing with anyone.
Yes, of course. And then
but
our audience is going to point out, and they're all free. Yeah, that's fair. But I also think that what Audinate has built in this short amount of time tells me, from a customer standpoint, that you are serious about this and that you know what customers, broadcasters, live venues, houses of worship, education, what they're going to need, and you are actively working on it. And every product now that I use from Audinate has been really good. Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I think when you mentioned the network, that was another thing where you can run the Dante video on the same network as your Dante audio, which is kind of nice, like your same VLAN, not like you wouldn't need totally separate networks, right? But in the same VLAN, it's kind of designed to work with your Dante audio, which would be another thing that's quite important.
Yes, I totally agree. My wonderful colleague, by the way, who the audience can't see, is also talking to me right here, and he says this is a really good question, and we do have a section reserved, at least a few minutes reserved here for Q&A, which we're almost at, frankly, but I want to go ahead and get to this one. If I understood the question right, and he'll correct me if I didn't, the question was, can we recommend, and I don't know if it was to me or Kat, can we recommend hardware Dante AV decoders they want to, or encoders, decoders, they want to connect to a Sony FX, which one was it?
Sony FX6.
Thank you. To a Sony FX6. I don't have that camera memorized, but I would say that if you have either an SDI out or an HDMI out, then there are lots and lots of options. Well, lots and lots. There's three, and they're all available for you to learn about at Audinate's website. Obviously, I am Tim Godby at Bolin Technology, so I'm going to tell you, we make I would say hardware.
Check out audinate.com/get Dante AV. You can see all of the encoder and decoder options for AV Ultra, right. And there is an SDI one, but we shouldn't talk about it.
Well, we obviously know who our competition is, and we're ecstatic to have them. By the way, in case anybody in the audience is curious, Kat knows this. We're happy to have other people in the Dante AV space, because it means many things. One, it means this is a thing. This is something that major manufacturers like us, and like the ones you'll learn about at audinate.com/get Dante AV, that's a good thing. It's a good thing for everybody. We make excellent equipment, and if SDI out is your only feed, then many of our customers just convert that to HDMI. You're going to add a little tiny bit of latency, but it's not bad. We have, I know, about 9 or 11 units, encoders in one facility. That's what they do. But there are others who've done a little bit of work for SDI, so you can find out about that. And of course, we have SDI on the decode. We've had that since we introduced our transceivers. So hopefully that answers your question.
And I think the great thing, and the great thing about the Dante products is that the Dante AV Ultra are all interoperable between whatever. So like, if one manufacturer has an encoder that you want, you can still use the Bolin camera, you can still use the Bolin decoder, whatever. And they all work together. Like the rest of your Dante audio system.
That is so well said. That's why there's more than just me on this stream, right? Because this is 100% true. Every single Dante device we plug into our network here in the studio works. It's immediately available in Dante Controller, and I can use the audio from that device with my video flow. I can subscribe them at will, and in multiple places, by the way. I can take that feed and send it out, multicast, at least in our network for sure. We got a question, Kat, about, the question was, do you need additional licenses for what, Sapan? I'm sorry.
Additional licenses for Dante to use third-party controllers.
I think I have it.
Yeah. Additional license for Dante to use third-party controllers. Kat, I'm going to let you take that one.
No, so the only thing you need is the Dante Domain Manager server, and then the modules to run are all free. So DDM is the cost, and then everything else is free.
That's right. And sure, DDM is the cost because it's Dante Domain Manager. And you mentioned this, but I want to bring it up again. And this is going back also to the comparison to NDI, but just as a matter of fact, Dante Domain Manager is a granular permission security, not just that, but alert environment. And so we get customers who want to know, well, how do I know? I've got a big network and a lot of things. How do I know if something's not working correctly? And my answer, Kat, is, well, DDM, because it's going to report to you any problems that it sees across your network, right? And then you can, the level of permissions and who can do what and who can make what kind of changes, I think almost down to like the individual granular level. It's crazy what you can. And I don't know of any equivalent to that in any other AV over IP solution. Now there might be, but I'm just not aware of it that can give you that much flexibility and control and security and alert. That DDM's it's just a great tool. Really, really good tool. Wow. Kat, we had planned for about this much time, I think. And I could talk to you all day, frankly, because you're just a lot of fun to talk to. I want to point out to those in the audience, we have very easily been flipping back and forth between Ultra, between H. I have changed subscriptions back and forth, and I've done it live with no nerves because I do this all the time, and I have high confidence both in our products, but also in Dante Controller and in Dante Studio. So I don't want to leave that unsaid. I want to mention, I just briefly kind of brushed over the switch, and you were nodding your head. I'm not sure everybody could see because I think I was full screen. I can't emphasize enough how important a really qualified switch is for Dante AV. Now, Dante has always had quality of service, best practices, and some of those things. But Dante AV is more bandwidth and is a slightly different animal. And so I always encourage people to really take good looks at the switches they're using, do the math literally for the bandwidth flows you want, get really good backplanes, 10 gig, and then have 10 gig uplinks. And that usually is the answer to just about everything. Do you want to add anything to that, Kat? Because you have more experience than I do.
For sure. I think one thing, like, with Dante audio only, like if you have a really small network, you can be like, oh, I can just use unmanaged switches and everything's fine.
Yes.
Can't really do that with video, especially AV Ultra, but also even with H, because of like, you want to prioritize like the clocking for your audio over the video streams no matter what. Right. So you do want to make sure that your switches have IGMP sweeping configurable, because it's pretty frequently that your video streams are going to be multicast if you're sending them to more than one place, as well as making sure QoS is configurable so that you can prioritize the Dante clocking so your audio devices don't mute on you. You don't want that. But I also think, as far as AV Ultra, like definitely stepping up if you're going to be doing a lot of like cross switch video, stepping up to those 10 gig uplinks is really important. It's less so if you're not going to be doing that, like if you're just using it in a single room. But it's nice to have that option, right? We obviously don't recommend any specific switches besides saying like something decent that's manageable is really what's important. So, it can, like, you don't need to go in and install, like the Netgear switches are excellent. Like if you don't have like an already installed infrastructure, and you're just like running a live show or something, they're
Right.
so easy to configure, so easy to set up,
Right.
which is great.
Yeah.
But but if you have that installed infrastructure, Dante can probably be run on it. And that's the other thing with Audinate, is like we do have support that can help you, and our support team is like ever growing. Now we have like we used to be like 2 people, and now we have like 7. So across the globe, so in any time zone you're in, we can help you out. So
Kat, I should give you the opportunity to mention as well that Audinate has rolled out some new master classes, right, where you have an opportunity for some in-depth learning in Portland, Oregon. So that's on Audinate's website as well. They should go and check that out. I know the person heading up those programs, and I like him a whole lot. And I've been looking at the curriculum, and it looks fantastic. Kat can't recommend specific switches, but I can. So if you want to email me, I will tell you what I think. Fine. However, I have seen Dante AV and experienced Dante AV Ultra working on multiple brands of switches. So there's no single one, but I will affirm that the Netgear Pro AV line, like specifically the M4250s and now the 4350s, they have done all of the hard work for configuration. Kat said it's super easy, and it is. You make one choice in a drop-down menu, and that's it. Your switch is completely configured for proper Dante AV. I also agree over multiple switches, and when we're at trade shows and not as much Dante Connect, well, the previous Dante Connect, that means something new now.
Yeah.
I just realized. But when we are at trade shows, we are always using multiple switches. So 2, 3, 4, and those uplinks are super, super handy. I think we have one more question, Kat, that we're going to have time to get to. So I'll let Sapan tell me what it is.
There's cameras on the desk that are pretty large. Do they have to be this big to retain their production quality and network functionality?
Wow. That is, congratulations to whoever asked that question, because I've never been asked that before, ever. And really? I love that. So the question was, and everybody in the chat can see it, but these cameras seem large to the person asking the question. And then the follow-up is, so do they have to be that large in order to have proper quality over a Dante AV network? I guess the answer I'm going to give is, these cameras don't look really, really large to me, except for the base, and that may be what they're talking about. For the Dante AV Ultra cameras, that was a design choice Bolin made early on. Does that mean that there will never be any other design for a Dante AV Ultra camera? Of course not. And for example, now we've got Dante AVH over here. This is a little tiny guy. I don't have a ruler to to set beside it, but this is a pretty small form factor. Kat's had several of these in her hands, and they're just not that large. So I guess my answer is, for the proper image block size we wanted, 4K in this case, and all of the other things that the PTZ part, the pan tilt zoom motors do, we chose that form factor, but it doesn't always have to look exactly this way or be exactly this size. It's kind of a non-answer, but I would say, well, yes, sort of. They needed to be that size for what we needed to do. Right?
Yeah. I'd say, some things are getting smaller. You might see if you're coming to IBC, we have some encoders and decoders for Ultra that have gotten down to about this big, as opposed to about that big. So that could also mean smaller camera form factors as well.
One thing
on the horizon.
Yeah, one thing I should mention, because this camera is from the very first Dante AV spec. Internally, we refer to it as a PDS, but the JPEG 2000 codec does a marvelous, almost magical job. It's what you see, frankly, when you go to movies these days. If you go into a movie anytime recently, you're probably seeing JPEG 2000, at least up till recently. But that is a beast to encode and decode. And so for us, heat dissipation was a big deal. We talked earlier about what we're doing on the transceiver side, but in the camera side, we needed heat dissipation space as well. And so part of the size has to do with that. And as changes or iterations or whatever happen in the Dante AV universe, I can also, as you were mentioning with the encoders, decoders, I can imagine that we'll have options that perhaps we didn't have at that time. So that's a really excellent question. Sapan, do we have any more?
Yeah.
You have two.
Okay.
One,
We've got two more.
How many video feeds could a 1 gig network switch handle?
Oh, that's a great question. Kat, are you seeing that one? How many simultaneous feeds? And I'm assuming they mean Dante AV Ultra. The questioner doesn't say, because that's two different answers, right?
Yeah.
For Dante
Well,
AV,
it also
go ahead.
It also depends on if you're doing like 1080p or 4K.
It sure does. So there's so many caveats in that. I can tell you what we do, which is routinely I can have 1080p, for instance. I can put 3, 4 simultaneous feeds easily in the switch that's right beside me. I've done it many, 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 many times. When you get up to 4K, it would depend. If you bandwidth limit it, like we did, down to 400, 500 megs, then you can probably, well, 2 for sure, and then 3, it would depend on whatever else was going through the switch, right? But these managed switches have a unique superpower, especially when IGMP packet snooping is doing its thing, where you can get away with more than perhaps you should, because the switches are going to be smart about what they need to listen to and what gets cast, across to the network. So there's just so many factors in there. When it's Dante AVH, I don't know what, Kat, 10? You could send you could fill up the switch with Dante AVH. No kidding.
I don't know. Yeah, the other thing is to remember that this would be like if you're sending it over the trunk link. So if you're containing things to like a single switch, as many as ports as you have, whatever, you might run into issues with like IGMP getting overloaded.
Right.
But I don't know at what point that happens. That's like a question for Netgear, it feels like.
Right.
But like, yeah, so across the switches, at trade shows, we normally use the 1 gig switches. So I normally don't do more than 1 video flow across it, and that's at 4K.
Right.
But at 1080p, you could reduce that. I've done more than 1 at 1080p, so 3 or 4 is fine.
Yes.
Just making sure you're definitely capping that bandwidth.
Right.
You could also set up a link aggregation group so that two ports, so you can get 2 gigs over if you need multiple feeds.
Good point. Yep, I'd forgotten about that. I agree, Kat. We do routinely 3 or 4 1080p flows all the time. That I don't ever stress about. When it gets to 4K, I don't think we've done more than 2 out of a single switch. But then we're uplinking multiple switches, and so that really opens up what your options are for how many flows. So it's a great question. We have one more.
Are there variants of the encoders and decoders that allow multiple camera inputs into an encoder, and a decoder interprets the output into multiple video signals?
Man, that's like the holy grail, isn't it, of hardware? Kat, to my knowledge, that answer is not yet. I'm not aware of any encoders that will do multiple encoders.
We were talking about form factor a little bit. So there's a couple things on the horizon that I think will make that happen. Right now, it's just a 1-to-1 encode to decode. There's a few things like the way you could do it is different, right? So you could have one that accepts that has like multiple actual like chips in it to do the decode, or you can use multi-view. So there's solutions to both of that on the horizon, but not quite yet.
One of the many things I like about these questions is the people asking them, not only do they have really, really great imagination, these are practical things. These are things that when you're out there in live performance or classrooms or whatever it is, these are things that are super helpful to have, and that some other AV over IP solutions can offer in different ways. And so Kat and I both have to be a little careful about what we would say in a forum like this, but you can be sure that a company like Audinate and Bolin are not going to do a one and done. They're not going to say, well, here you go, Dante AV world. We love it. Let's go. We do love it, and it provides very, very practical, workable, excellent solutions. But nobody's just going to rest on their laurels and not continue to improve and iterate. So to everybody in the audience and all the folks who ask questions, that may be your best answer. Kat, wow, this has been fun. I knew it would be, so I don't want to sound like I'm surprised that it was. But again, I want to say thank you to you personally. I know how busy you are. You're 3 hours different in the time zone too. And for our European viewers, thank you so much for staying up late wherever you are in the world. I'm glad that you're here. For those that ask questions, thank you. And Kat, is there anything that we didn't cover in the context of the live stream that we should have? Is there anything you can think of that you'd like to add or at least to address?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think we're good.
Okay.
Just thanks
Yes,
for
of
coming
course.
and checking it out. And yeah, we also have our site for end users. It's just audinate.com/get Dante AV, which
Right.
kind of goes into products that are available and or will be available shortly, as well as just a little recap of like what each of Dante AV Ultra does versus Dante AVH.
Absolutely. And to your point, audinate.com is a great resource anyway. There is so much on that site. And if I may, I'd like to also say bolintechnology.com is another really great resource for Dante AV. We have a lot of video content, so a lot of overviews, specific things. How do you do this? How do you do that? I did a Dante controller deep dive that, congratulations to anybody that makes it through that whole hour and 5 minutes, but it does have chapter markers.
Wow.
And so you can go right to the, but our point was for Bolin, and because Audinate has the same DNA, for Bolin, education is really important, and we want people to know what these solutions are and how they work and how you can get the most and the best out of them. So I've done a fair amount of best practice type content just based on our experience, but I highly encourage everyone to go to audinate.com, get Dante AV, or just look around the whole site. It's really great. And Bolin Technology.
And on the topic of and then on the topic of training, our Dante AV elective just got certified for 1.something 5 maybe or 2.5 RU credits for CTS. So if you're looking to get those credits in for your CTS, you can go take the Dante AV.
Good point. There will be several people in the audience that'll matter to. And the Dante training and now Dante certification version 2 includes Dante AV. So that is just fantastic certification to go through. When a customer is talking to us or a systems integrator, and they tell me, yeah, we're Dante level 2, everybody, and then we got that one that's Dante level 3, I relax a little bit because I know it's going to be an informed conversation. So I highly recommend those. Okay, well, again, I'm Tim Godby with our special guest, Kat Taub. Kat, thanks again so much for joining us, for your time and all this informative stuff, because you know everything about everything that I've ever needed to know, or if you didn't, the 1 or 2 times you sure knew who did. And so I appreciate that. Professional to professional, you are a joy to work with. For everybody in the audience, thanks for joining us so much. The replay will be available, I guess, almost immediately. And remember, bolintechnology.com, audinate.com, and we will see you. I'm not sure when the next stream will do, Kat, but hopefully some other time in the future we'll have some exciting things to talk about. We'll get together again and do that. All right.
Cool. Sounds great. Thank
Goodbye,
you.
everybody.